words, do they? It's all the same.
Flow is taken as this canonical idea in the field of game studies. But what is a problem with doing that at any time? Canonical ideas get taken unquestioningly by people. Okay? That's never a good thing. So you have a certain set of ideas that become, to use the terminology, hegemonic. People take them up as being unproblematic, but actually there are big problems involved with any set of theoretical ideas, because they always come from a certain perspective. Now, Csikszentmihalyi was he's still alive actually, a Czech psychologist, growing up in post-World War II Czechoslovakia. That's a problem. Not a problem from us, but a problem perhaps for the objectivity of Csikszentmihalyi's theory. A dissident Czech psychologist went to work in the United States in the 1970s. Can anyone tell me what he was escaping by doing that?
The USSR?
Well, not as a thing,
But communism.
but communism, yeah. The USSR wasn't a dude. There were a lot of them. But yeah, the ideology he was escaping was communism. Post-World War II, Central and Eastern Europe was controlled by the Soviet Union in terms of its political systems, and the system they put in place was communism. For many people, communism was a very, very dark time in history. Repression of ideas in particular, and, if you like, the hegemony of a particular set of ideas around Marxism. Marxist dogma became the only way in which people could express ideas in the post-World War II environment in Central and Eastern Europe, because it was controlled by the Soviet Union, who structurally had Marxist ideas as a core part of their political philosophy. Csikszentmihalyi developed in that system and rebelled against that system, hence becoming a dissident, because he disagreed with a lot of those ideas. He also disagreed with the general oppression of society in Czechoslovakia. So, flow as a concept is a response to Marxism. If we take some of the tenets of Marxism as collective ownership and collective responsibility and social responsibility, flow as an idea goes against those things, because flow describes individual experience. It cannot describe a collective experience, because collectively, although we may all engage in an activity in which we experience flow, we are not experiencing it as a group. It is experienced as an individual. And if you think again of the analogy with a film, right? See, like everyone in this room goes to watch Barbie in the summer in the same cinema. Okay? 75% of us are in a state of flow. You know, really enjoying the experience of watching Barbie. And then there's people like me who are lobbing bits of ice out of their drink at people because they're bored shitless after 20 minutes, because this is not their thing. Right? We're all having the same collective experience, but we do experience it differently from one another. This is why some people can have a game and think, oh my god, I love that game, I played it for so many hours, it just dominated my life, it was incredible, blah 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 blah. And somebody else said, shit, I played it for 5 minutes and I turned it off. Didn't know what the hell was going on. Flow isn't a universal principle. So, that is why flow is an alternative to Marxism, because Marxist ideas about the structuration of society are like, treat everyone the same. You will all enjoy this stuff. You will all have a kick from this. Actually, flow argues in a very different way. So unlike Marx, who argued that alienation be solved only by collective revolution, Csikszentmihalyi imagined the flow experience could re-immerse people in their own lives without the need for revolution, removing alienation by allowing them to experience the absorbing effects of play. He had high hopes for this sort of stuff. Flow was going to change the world one by one. We could all enjoy life if we committed ourselves to doing stuff that we enjoyed in it. There's a genuine idea of social change through this concept. That if you all find things that you love doing, everyone's going to be happy. Now he's actually wrong about that as well, because that's not how life works. And indeed, what he underestimates is how flow actually doesn't last. You could drive along on a motorway for 2 hours, right? Not thinking about anything that's going on around me, really, put on Pearl Jam album or something like that, really happy, right? But about 2 hours, I'm like, I need to stop doing this. I'm bored now. It's worn out. That lovely experience that I get in is actually worn down. I've tipped out of it. What Csikszentmihalyi highly kind of underestimates is that we get restless. We want new things all the time. It's one of the flaws of us being human. We always want the new thing. It's like the new iPhone out, right? A couple of weeks ago. What's the point? It does exactly the same things that the old one did. Might do them better, but I always read things like this. The processor means that it will process this in X amount of microseconds. And the fuck do I care? I can't perceive microseconds. It's no bearing on my existence whatsoever. But kind of shiny. It looks kind of cool. Yeah, I like that. Because I need the new thing, right? I always need the new thing, I need the new game all the time. The old games work just fine, but no, I need the new one all the time. What he underestimates with that is the need for dynamic social change. Now, flow is definitely not uncomplicated. It's certainly not a solution to problems of contemporary alienation. So it's not a natural psychological state of experience, and it's used as an ideology. Flow in particular has been used as an ideological tool to describe how life can be really, really good. Flow is like almost the classic capitalist theory. It's like, there are, in a capitalist society, any number of experiences open to you people. You just need to go and find the one you like. And you are free to choose what that is. And you will find something and you will become really, really good at it, and that's what you will be. That's how structuration in capitalist societies basically works. It privileges individuality over social collectiveness. Where it becomes problematic flow is what you enjoy. So do we tolerate, for example, because people enjoy it, things like violence? Because you might find it difficult to believe. I don't think there's anyone in this room who's a raving psycho, but you might find it difficult to believe that some people like violence. Some people like it in other people. It gives them a great buzz. It gives them arousal. And when they do that in an environment where the challenge meets their skills at hitting people, they get a real, real buzz out of it. Do we tolerate that? Well, for Csikszentmihalyi, we probably should. Because that person is meeting their individualistic needs and hitting that flow channel very, very nicely. It's kind of interesting that for a video game, actually, if you could displace that through catharsis. So instead of hitting people, you kill loads of people in a video game. Maybe that's a better way of doing it. It encourages growth and accumulation over equilibrium and sustainability. Always be chasing the flow state. Always be accumulating stuff to meet that desire. You like driving? Get rid of your shitty Ford Fiesta. Have the ultimate driving machine instead. BMW 5 Series much better for that state of flow. Like playing video games? Don't play them on your phone. Play them on a £450 PlayStation 5 instead. Much better experience. And like when a couple of years from now, PlayStation 5, kid's toy. You want to see PlayStation 6, that's going to blow you away. You've got to buy that. You've got to queue for it. You've got to get into that whole fucking thing that we all got into when PlayStation 5 came out, when nobody could buy them, and you went on eBay to go and get them off scalpers who were buying all the stock. Yeah, it's not great. It prioritizes self-determination over the idea that external forces shape human consciousness. And this is the most important idea of the law. What flow prioritises as a theory is the idea that we can control consciousness ourselves. That we can engage in activities which direct our consciousness in the ways we want to. And it ignores that we exist in a world where there are all sorts of competing demands for this sort of stuff. It also ignores the fact that there's a whole bunch of stuff that we have to do which is never going to be a flow activity. And we've got to do it. Because if we don't do it, we're just going to starve or something. You know, I quite enjoy bits of my job. I enjoy doing this, for example. There's a hell of a lot of my job I don't enjoy doing. I do not enjoy answering emails. I do not enjoy that ping. I fucking hate that ping. I don't like marking. I hate marking. I hate reading the same mistakes over and over again. After I've read it twice, I want to pick up my computer, or the monitor at least, and I want to take it to the next student who's made the same mistake and smash it into their cranium. And then stamp on them until they have no teeth left. And that's just the third fucker. There's another 70 to go after that. Things I don't enjoy, but I've got to do them anyway. What She Sent Me Highly is proposing here is that we just focus on the stuff that we like doing, but that's not how life works. Wouldn't it be wonderful if life worked like that? Well, no, it wouldn't be actually. If you read dystopian fiction like Brave New World by Aldous Huxley, he proposes a world in which everyone does the stuff that they just enjoy doing, and it's horrible. Nothing ever gets done. And society falls apart. Morality is a thing of the past. It's a grim dystopian vision, because people just sit around doing the shit that they enjoy doing. And, you know, for a more up-to-date one, you could look at the Disney film WALL-E, which makes much the same argument, to be honest. So it's like, everyone's just going to do the stuff they enjoy. So they ruin the earth, go and live on a spaceship, and everyone grows morbidly obese, because all they do is sit and eat and enjoy a sort of computer-simulated reality, rather than actually having anything good in their lives. Flow as an ideological perspective is very, very problematic because of this, because it prioritizes individual enjoyment of that kind. What Braxton Soderman proposes is that what flow does is create a flowing subject. If we play lots of games that encourage us that flow is an optimal experience, in our lives we will try to focus on things where we can recreate that experience all the time, and ignore things which actually don't fall into that but are worthwhile. So we won't be like Jay. We won't read the difficult books. But what's the net result of not doing what you do, Jay? Go on, you say it, it's alright.
Well, I don't know
Yeah, you
what
do.
I was going to say.
They're just too fucking modest to say it, that's all. We won't get a degree as good as Jay's. Jay will go far. You know? Jay will have this sparkly, I don't know, certificate or some shit, right? It's got this written on it. Like, you know. And then he'll go to a job interview and he'll be like, yeah, check me out. And then he'll be like, oh my God. And he'll be like, please, take money. You know? Have this shit. And that's how it's going to be, right? It's not going to be that way, Jay, sorry about it, but you know, I'm using you as an indicative example rather than an exact example. I would see this with like kids I used to teach when I was in school all the time. I remember this girl come up to me like GCSE year, right? She goes, I really want to be a vet. And I was like, what the fuck do you want to be a vet for? I didn't say that to her because she was like 15 and it's a bit discouraging to say to 15-year-olds, you know, you're wasting your fucking life. She'd never even handed in any work. I'd never marked anything off her in her entire time in school. I really want to be a vet. I was like, okay. Well, that's a really, really good aim. Let me explain to you a little bit about what you have to do to be a vet. You know, and there's like you have to have A's in maths and A's in sciences. You have to go on to your A levels and do, you know, biology and maths and chemistry and all this. And you have to get A's in all those as well, because you won't get accepted to a university to do veterinary science unless you have those grades. And you know, it's like if you can imagine like a balloon, and you just put a pin, you know, not put a pin in it, but you just undid the knot at the bottom, and just all the air just came out, and like a sort of face just went like this. And so, well, what's stopping you from doing that? That was the key thing. And she was like, oh, I can't do any of those things. And I'm, yeah. Because you never actually learned how to do them in the first instance, right? The challenge was going to be far too high for her skills. She was never going to be able to do it anyway. But it's hard to understand that when you've spent your life chasing experiences which you enjoy. And when you convince yourself, I'm going to enjoy being a vet, and you've met with the reality that you can't do it, that's a really deflating experience. What Braxton Soderman is arguing is that we've created flowing subjects in society. Our adoption of the principles of flow, that you primarily do things that you enjoy and you want to do and you find enjoyable, has created generations of people who now can't understand that they can't do anything that they fucking want, because they're flowing subjects. Okay? This hyper-individualism and chasing this, you know, I always enjoy doing this thing, becomes the structural technique by which we advance through life. And we see it, look, it's going to sound awfully harsh, there's nobody that this refers to in this room, you know, the disclaimer to this, right? But we as a university let people into courses that should not be anywhere near the university. This used to be the preserve of like what we call like the lower ranked universities years ago. Like, you know, I don't want to be horrible because I know people who work there and I think they do really good work, but like Trinity St David's University, you kind of take anyone who kind of applied over the years and you kind of like, it was our place to work. You know, because there's kids there who shouldn't be in university. We do it now as well. People who've been told, if you go to university, you'll get a better job, you'll get better prospects and that. Well, actually, that's not quite true anyway. There's a lot more to it than that. But these are flowing subjects. They've been told, like, you know, this is, if you want to get that thing that you really want, do this thing, and you'll be able to do it. It's like, you're coming in, just not able to do it. The challenge is too much. I'm getting it now. I always get in MS 100. It's the one that I always appears at. You know, I'm getting students sending me work right now for that lovely task that you all did about summarising William Merrin's chapter. And it's quite clear. It's not clear, you know, the thing isn't that they haven't read the chapter. They have read it, they don't understand a word of it. It does not make any sense to them whatsoever. I understand absolutely why. Because they have been through this flow education system, but the challenge and skill pitch has been at a level which means they can't accelerate up. Too much of a bridge to go over. The challenge is now too high. So they never, and inevitably when you get a drafted piece of work comes in, I found this really difficult. Yeah, I bet you did. It's not their fault. That's the most unkind thing. It's never that fault of that person. So a lot of people who do that exercise with me in year one, I know they haven't fucking read the chapter. And that's their fault because they haven't put the effort in to do it. I know what the difference is. There's people who have and have gone over it and have tried to do it and have really put a lot of effort in and they can't do it. That's a big difference. But it's a symptom of what flow has done to society. This idea that we can meet our desires through this kind of thing, that we can always pitch in this way, that individually we can keep on doing anything that it is that we want to do. It channels us towards things which really are inappropriate. Now, we obviously want to understand it in terms of video games, but this is more in terms of video game culture. What do playing video games that put us constantly in the flow channel actually promote as gamers? And then we can broaden out what the definition of a gamer is. We're not just talking about hardcore gamers, you know, to use those categories I used a while ago, which I roundly debunked in the lecture anyway, and we're going to use them anyway. We're not just talking about hardcore gamers, we're talking about anyone who is put in this experience of flow. That's actually, in essence, people who don't even play video games. There's also your casual gamer who plays Candy Crush Saga and gets a huge amount of enjoyment and dopamine hits out of completing a level on Candy Crush and keeps on going and going forward in a game so expertly designed to tap into the flow channel that's untrue. There's a reason why those games, before your time, the one before it was Angry Birds. A sort of perfect design illustration of flow in action. Couldn't pick a better one. Challenge versus skill in almost a perfect blend. The other game which actually does this better than any other game that I've ever played is Super Mario Brothers, the first Super Mario Brothers game. I'm not wearing this jumper to illustrate that today, it's just occurred to me. Didn't think this is a planned thing, but the initial Super Mario Brothers game for the Nintendo Entertainment System is the perfect game when it comes to flow. The way that challenge and skill is balanced in that game is quite incredible. Has anyone actually ever played that game for Super Mario Bros? Did you finish it?
I think so.
It's
When I was a
really
kid.
hard.
I remember struggling when I was a kid.
Yeah,
It was
it's
obviously-
what's interesting about it is until it is genuinely that flow map, at the end, it's staggeringly difficult to beat. Because the last couple of levels are like, you will die 1,000 times. Because the challenge is so high. But you've built up this mastery of Mario as a character. It's like, the last level is asking you to do jumps which you have to measure to the pixel, even though you can't see the pixels. That's how precise it is. But you do it. You can do it. It's incredibly well designed in that sense, but it's so frustrating in the end. So, video games are often such an irresistible configuration in part because developers seek to integrate flow-producing conditions into game design and calibrate the experience to optimize playful consumption. If you want to become a game designer, that's your Bible. That's all you're being ever asked to do. Game designers, that is what they're asked to do right there. Successful game designer does that. An unsuccessful game designer doesn't do that. You want to make big bucks as a game designer? That's what you need to do. So, what does flow actually do? Well, if you want to be critical, is used to extend playtime to ensure that players continue to consume a product. The end result of flow is you keep people locked into a product. Now, historically, that was less problematic than it is today. But in the era of network play and accounts, data flows, this actually becomes far more problematic. As you'll remember from other modules you've done with me, the key driver of the attention economy is how much attention you can get somebody to pay to something, and how you can then market the data that they produce during that time in order to make it, worthwhile. Sony, Nintendo, Microsoft are no different to any other organization in this way. If they have a game which consumes a huge amount of your time, they will use that data as a fundamental basis for selling you as a product to others. It is no accident that when you play games for a long period of time, you will start to be marketed games of that genre or that type, and you will start to see that information. You will start to see concurrent differences in your Amazon accounts, in your social media accounts. And I think, oh my God, I'm playing that game at the moment. Yeah. That data about you playing has been sold to Facebook, who then put it up on your Instagram account. They know. They don't know as in like I know. But the data systems and algorithms know what you're doing. We are providing data by engaging in these things. It is another instance of how surveillance capitalism works. So, flow, loss of time, addiction all become part of the capitalist system that we are existing in today. That intention absorption is a marketable ideology. The more you can get people to enjoy stuff, the more you can sell them that stuff at the end of the day. And also, flow in itself is a little bit of a worry. When we go with the flow, we do not pause to consider the reasons for our actions. You are creating, in essence, a zombie character. a zombie life force. That's not great for a functioning democracy. You abandon interest in other things. Now, might hit close home for some people. It certainly hits close to home for me. Have you ever, you're not allowed to use parents, okay? Forget about parents. We're all adults now. We don't have to listen to what parents tell us to do. But, have you ever had a relationship with another person that has got into trouble, either because you were A, playing video games too much, or B, doing something too much and they complained that you weren't paying them enough attention? Sucks, doesn't it? Now think about game design. That's what it's designed to do. It's designed to ruin your relationships. The whole point of it is to keep you in the flow channel for so long that you ignore everything around you. The number of I've been playing video games for more than 30 years, right? 35 years, something like that. The number of relationships I've had, I don't want to say like I've had a million relationships, but I've had a few, where people have said to me, you pay more attention to that stupid video game than you do me. And how can you argue against it? It's like, because at that point in time, do you know what I probably was? In all fairness, I probably was. You know, because that's what the game's designed to do. It's designed to make me do that. It's designed to take me away from other people and from interactions with others. Close, intimate, meaningful human relationships with people that you love and respect. That's anathema to the flow experience. It's all about this. Yeah? It's all about me enjoying. Does anyone really enjoy sitting watching another person play a video game? Shit. Some people might tell you that, but it's not fun for them. It's not fun for me. I just want to rip the controller out of their hands and play it myself, right? This is really, really problematic as an idea. What kind of people are created by flow experiences? Selfish, self-absorbed. These aren't words we usually describe people as positives, you know? Jade's great, so selfish. Amazing. You'd be really, really, you know, if somebody described you that way, you'd be like, what? You know, that's not on, right? So, but it's like, game studies looking at it, flow's amazing. Flow does, whoa, step back here a second. What are we saying?
Yeah. Can we have both a flowing conversation? Because I tend to overuse this word maybe when I was younger, that I do not like have a flow with someone.
Sure, you can
connect.
You can do that, but
not only in game, okay. In
exactly,
game
but
context, yes.
in the context of this, what we're talking about is experience
However,
designed to not let that happen.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the important thing here. You know, video game designers and thinking, you know, what we need to do is design a game which really absorbs somebody and they can talk to other people, because they know that can't be done, right? Because your attention is being pulled away from. You can't mix your attention in those ways. We call that attentional channels, right? You know, if you're speaking to somebody, you give them an eye contact. I can't play on a fucking Switch at the same time. It just doesn't work that way. So they're actually prioritising experiences which take us away from the possibility of doing that in the first instance. Yeah. So I understand the point, and you can be in the presence of another person and be in a flow state, no question about it, and that's, I guess, what the feeling of being in a good relationship is, right? That you spend time with people and it's enjoyable, and it seems like the rest of what's going on isn't important. That's really what we should all be aiming for in life, children. Is what I plan. Okay.
So you know when like
Oh, you want to go?
oh sorry.
I was just about to say, like, some games I'm playing, like, I play a game called War Thunder with mates.
Yeah.
I only play it because I like playing with friends. That's the only, I don't really play it alone.
I was gonna say,
I enjoy,
fantastic.
I enjoy that moment of just
You do.
talking and playing at the same time, but that's not really flow, is it? Because I'm engaging with the real
Well,
world.
I think it is flow. I think what you're getting there, that enjoyment of it and the whole environment of it, is a flowing experience. But let's say you had a whole bunch of other stuff to do
Yeah.
at the same time. You're not paying attention to that, right?
Yeah.
You're still caught in that flow state in a particular way, which means you prioritise that over other things. Do you know what I mean? So you can build this, it's like you were saying, Harold, right? You know, you can have flowing conversations, yeah, but you know, don't have a flowing conversation when, you know, with another person when you're babysitting.
Yeah.
Do you know, and it's that same thing, it's drawing your attention away from everything else to focus on that thing that you enjoy. You can say, Connor.
Yeah, it's the sort of thing.
Yeah.
You know, when you're talking with friends while you're playing a game, you're just totally, like you said, you are in the state of flow. You're having a laugh with them, having a joke with them, you're playing the game, but you're not thinking about playing the game. It's just so much fun. It just, yeah.
And what's interesting, if you think about the character of those kind of experiences, is what you're talking about. You are very rarely talking about topics or ideas which require a lot of attention. And you're all in the same position as that. Because you know, kind of subconsciously, that as soon as you do that, you're going to break the experience in some way. You know, everyone in the past has had, hopefully you've dropped this person now, but everyone in the past has had a friendship with a real buzzkill. You know that person where everyone's having fun and enjoyment, and then they'll pop up and say, they'll show you something on the phone and say, look at this massacre that happened yesterday. And so, what's the matter with you? You know, I do not want to see you bunch of dead bodies everywhere. Like, you know, there's another time for that. You don't have that when you're in that experience. You don't have that one person going up to say, like, oh yeah, no, I'm enjoying playing FIFA, like, you know, gotta have like rectal surgery tomorrow, it's gonna be really gnarly, like, and they start sending photos of the procedure, like, that doesn't happen in that way, right? So everyone, if you like, it's almost like a contract between the people involved, that we're gonna keep it at this level, where we're all enjoying like this. Do you know what I mean? So in that, we sort of draw corners around our interactions to keep them, I don't want to say basic, but keep them of a particular character so they're not challenging. And that becomes a really important part of the flow state, I think. Definitely, it's a point really well made by all three of you, in fact, that flow states can be, if like, cooperative, that they can be social. But even in the social context, they are limited in particular ways. So, basically, and I bring up Helen Kennedy on this slide. Obviously, you can go through these slides at your own time. There's loads of information on them. Bring up Helen, actually, because she's my ex-boss. Poor woman. You should, honest, no, if you think I'm a twat now, you must have seen me when I was working for Helen years ago. Oh my God, that woman through hell. But Helen's a really, really good games theorist, I should add, and she's really, really fantastic. But what we should benefit from as games scholars is actually examining the ideological position of the flow subject. We take flow for granted as an idea, but in reality, flow tells us an ideological perspective on people which we should really not be very comfortable with. Because in a flow, let's argue possibly that we could continually continue our lives in a flowing state. We are hedonistic zombies at that point. Unthinking, unknowing, chasing the perfect balance between challenge and skill which suits us. Never mind about other people, it's all about us as well. Which is why I said hedonistic, chasing our own pleasures, zombie, not thinking too much about it. That's not great. That's not a great subject or subject position to be in. But if we prioritise flow in the way that we have done in game studies and across society, it's really, really problematic. And these are some of the ideologies that flow privileges. Privilege is an ideal unity over fragmentation. Well, life is pretty fragmented. You know, life is difficult, life is challenging. Life asks us to do lots of different things. What flow prioritises that we have this like ideal unity of things rather than actually confronting things head on. Privilege is growth and accumulation through the consumption of resources. That's not how the world works, unfortunately, but you wouldn't know that. Actually, if you look out in the world, it's like, we can grow the economy 3% every year. It's like, no, you can't. That's not how the world works. There's a finite amount of resources out there. Flow privileges action over reflection, because actually what the truth is When Jay was talking about reading books at the beginning, Jay was reflecting. That period where you actually have to stop and think about all this stuff, that's reflection. That's hard. That's where hard work comes in when you're reading, because you have to stop and reflect on what is actually being said. That's the payoff of actually doing it. Flow encourages that we don't do that, that we just keep on moving. This is why actually some games really interesting we look to break flow. One of the guy who's most responsible for putting this mechanism into games is Hideo Kojima, who you might know from Death Stranding, but probably best known series of games is Metal Gear Solid. The initial Metal Gear Solid game is a heavily punctuated game experience. It's the best way of putting it. You have these short snippets of gameplay where you're asked to engage in stealth combat, basically. The first real game, I think the first game which has stealth built into it as a real mechanism to do everything through. And then really long cinematic cutaways. really, really long. So like the actual length of time you play Metal Gear Solid, if you take all those cutaways, it's a really short game at the end of the day, but it takes a long time to get to. Because some, like, at the end, it's like half an hour cinematic cutaway. At the end, it goes on forever. What Kojima is doing here is a really important meta point about game design. He's like, actually, we don't want to make players that flow because they don't think about anything if they do that. If we cut the game up in this way, we can actually put political ideas in play. Metal Gear Solid is a really interesting political game about nuclear proliferation. The message in it is anti-nuclear and anti-warfare. But in order to get that across, like you couldn't, if you listen to him talk about the game, and if you've ever read any sort of biographies of it, I'm reading one at the moment, he couldn't think of a mechanism to do that in the game without making the game less playable. You had to smash the game up, basically. You had to smash the flow up in order to put the ideas across. Now, we're going to run out of time here, as we always do, okay? But basically, the topic that I want you to take from this into your assignments is about immersion. Immersion is a really, really tricky sort of concept. And flow is one of the best ways of talking about immersion. But I want you to think about how immersed you are in the game that you are playing for your thing. It's, again, I don't want people to actually do this, but it's almost easier to play a game for a video that you don't like, because then you can critique why you don't feel immersed in it. It's harder to talk about things that you are immersed in it because you have that feeling of being immersed in them. Which then leads me to think, well, I'd much rather you talk about games you enjoy because that's a much better video. You produce something much better if you do that, but it's an interesting balance now. But I do want you to address the question, basically, how immersed do you feel playing this game? And why? This gets you to talk about all the elements of the game that actually work together simultaneously to immerse you. Graphics, sound, controls. Those are the big three, usually. What's the game look like? What's the game sound like? How does the game control? Control is the most important. Always the most important of the three. You can play a game which has really, really shoddy music, really, really shoddy graphics, like Pac-Man. But damn, that control is so easy. Just asking you to do something which is so intuitive, so easy to do. There's not even a button. It is literally just a joystick. And move around. It's intuitive. An infant could play that game and get good at it.
Can we reflect on the repercussions of our immersion in the game? So
Absolutely.
in the real world, when you disconnect from the game and get back to reality, how you start perceiving certain
Absolutely. Hugely. What? But can you flesh that out a little?
This is gonna sound dumb, but
I'm sure it isn't.
I started playing GTA 4, and I was like walking down the street, and there was cars. And I started thinking, well, that's a nice car. Like, for a second, I was thinking, like, I could steal that car and get in that car. And I was like, no, I'm not in the game, I'm in reality.
That's amazing.
It was
I
really
want
fun.
to see that in the video. That is amazing. I have played GTA for more than 25 years. I have never thought of nicking a car. I love it. It's just absolutely brilliant.
So when you talk about Kojima, you're saying how the like geopolitical questions and that interrupt the flow.
Yeah.
But
Because he recognises that it's really difficult to put those ideas into a game experience. You have to develop something else.
So would you define flow is when you're not thinking but just experience? Because I play
Exactly.
story games and I think I lose track of time as well.
Yeah.
And this should
Put
I
it-
say
What's really is there somebody who plays Call of Duty? Okay. Call of Duty series is almost the most interesting example of this. You never think about what you're being asked to do in Call of Duty. You just do it. It's action over reflection. So, if you're given a mission in Call of Duty to, like, you know, you're an American soldier, an American squad being asked to go somewhere and secure, you know, because it's got all the euphemisms in it, right? Secure the territory. So, what does that mean? You can fucking kill everyone who's there, right? Sweep them out of their land and take it over because there's probably oil underneath there. That's a really important set of political ideas at play, which you ignore in the playing of it because it prioritises action and flow over the reflection of what you're actually asked to do. Right? So why I got a huge critique of a lot of first-person games in the literature, and that critique basically revolves around the way the game is built never engages players in the wider political context of which they're being asked to take part in as a player. You know, Civilization is very similar, weirdly. It's just a really well-designed game, but it's like, what is it asking you to do? It's asking you to take over the world from a particular perspective. What happens to all those other things? You know, and I know Sid Meier thinks about things like that when he's designing the games, but actually, because his game is so well-designed, you don't think about them when you're playing it. You just think, I'm going to kill all these other civilizations.
I'm going to need this city.
Exactly, yeah. So you just go through it in that way.
So when I make a moral choice, if it is a game that brings up a moral choice that
Yeah.
I have to think of my own sense, that's breaking the flow, but in a positive light.
Yeah, and there's a really interesting. I mean, I talked about Bioshock a couple of lectures ago, right? That's a game that plays with that idea really quickly because it asks you to make a moral choice and never tells you that it is a moral choice. There's a mechanism in Bioshock. Spoiler alert if you haven't played it. Sorry, because the game is 15 years old. Get with it. Where you have to generate power for your character by interacting with little girls, basically. They're called little sisters in the game. And you can do this in two ways. You can either suck them of their power and they die, which gives you more power, or you can heal them and you still get some power, but not as much as the others. Now, depending on it's almost like an ethical system in the game, this. Depending on how you treat those those NPCs in the game, the ending of the game is considerably different. And basically how the game treats you as an individual is incredibly different. In essence, you can't complete the game successfully without being nice to the little sisters, because the ending, if you suck them of all their power and leave them dying, actually means that you kind of die at the end of it. The game has stopped, but your character actually will die. The only way you can escape the world of Bioshock is by being nice to them, but you don't know that.
Yeah.
There's no indication of that in the game when you're playing it whatsoever. Okay? It never tells you that. So it's actually testing your morality as an individual, and whether is a flowing subject, the best option is to kill the little sisters. But as a moral subject, the best option is not to kill little girls for their resources, and instead make a moral decision.
So flow is a form of immersion, not immersion.
Yeah, there can be different forms of
Yeah.
immersion, basically, yeah. Which is why, I mean, I haven't got time to go over these slides now, but you can go over them. There's not many ideas. What I've done here is take some of the theoretical ideas from different fields, in particular literature studies about immersion. Well, immersion's actually, and I've referred to reading a few times in this, immersion is a very important thing. And I've left you with a few ideas of my own here, which taken from my own research and work on immersion as well. Why I propose that immersion involves an assemblage of different things, and they have to be in perfect synchronicity with one another for us to feel immersed in a particular way. really the core of what I wanted to get across today was flow as a concept, though, because it is so critically important for understanding how we play, but also what mass adoption of video games as an entertainment form in Western society has done to society itself as well. What effects video games has. We always often think of video games in terms of a narrow sort of fucking thing about violence in video games. Well, a lot of us don't play violent video games. That's the truth there. But we all play games that try to put us in that state. That's a much, much bigger thing. Right, I know some of you got to go, so we will finish up there, okay? And I will see you in a fortnight.